Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Today I want to talk about Kadee couplers and how do you go about operating with Kadee couplers on your locomotives and rolling stock. And that's important because it plays a role in how we decide where we're going to place the under-track magnets that are used for uncoupling cars and locomotives that use Kadee couplers. So stick around for the video and we'll take a look at Kadee couplers for operation. Before we go on, I want to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It's simple, easy, and free. All you have to do is hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Let's just begin by looking at a couple of magnets that you can use with Kadees and other similar types of magnetically activated couplers based on the Kadee design. And that includes the Bachmann Easy Mate, and BLI makes their own. A lot of these different companies produce their own knockoff versions of the Kadees. Walthers has their version, and to be honest with you, I tried using them mixed in with my Kadees. They don't work very well. They don't work that well with each other, to be honest with you, when it comes to magnetic uncoupling. So I've gone back. I only use Kadee magnetic couplers now. Okay, so what I want to do then first is show you a couple of the magnets that I've used in operations on the layout. And here's one. This is a Bachmann Easy Mate magnet with a brakeman, but basically this is the magnet here, and it sits, you cut out a spot in your roadbed, your cork roadbed is what I use. So I just leave a spot for that so that I can go ahead and drop that in, and then you just lay your rails right over top of it. And it produces a very strong magnetic force that will cause these Kadee type couplers to separate. Another type that Kadee makes are these right here, and you can see it looks like a little bar magnet, but it fits between the rails, okay? And so this allows you to go ahead and put these in after the fact, after you've already laid all your track. You can drop these in place, and they will perform pretty much the same way that the under the track magnet will. The under track magnet is still just a little bit stronger. It's a little bit wider, so you're going to get a better separation of the couplers, but these work fairly well. And the great thing about these is you can put a piece of double-sided 3M Scotch tape on the bottom of these, and you can stick them down anywhere you want on your layout and test the locations for them after you've already laid your track and everything. So you can find the best spot. You don't have to figure out in advance where you want all of your magnets to be. And unfortunately, you do have to do that with these. You have to be able to figure out where you want to put these before you lay your track. I've managed to install a couple in places after the fact, but it's a difficult process. And so you're much better off doing this up front and figuring out where you want to put them and then do it. Okay, another option, and unfortunately I don't have one of these. I've ordered some additional ones to use. I thought I had one, but I didn't. I just had the empty package. So these are a number 309, and they're an electromagnetic under the track uncoupler. Okay, so you put these kits together, and then you just cut a hole in the top of your baseboard, drop these in place, and then you can wire these up to a 16-volt DC power supply. You can use an AC power supply with a bridge rectifier if you desire. But I just use a standard 16-volt bus under here to be able to activate all of my electronic uncouplers like these. But you put those in there and a push button to activate them, or one of the timer circuits that I've shown in the past in my videos. Now the reason why I do that, well, because with these, your trains don't uncouple unexpectedly, as they can as they float over a magnet. Because if you go over a magnet very, very slow, and the cars bunch up and bang up against each other, they can uncouple as they're going over a magnet. And that can be disconcerting in the middle of an operation to be crawling through town in front of a station and suddenly have your train uncouple because you're going so slow that they tend to bump up against each other and uncouple. So if you put in an electromagnet in places like that, you control whether or not they're going to uncouple. And you can stop them right over that, hit the button, and the magnet will come on, you can uncouple and go on your way. But let me show you a couple of other things while we're here. Now, one thing that you can use is a thing called a coupler pick. And I've got two here to show you. Now, the yellow one right here is made by Kadee, and you can see it's got a little point right here on the end. And the way these work is you insert these, let me get that off the magnet, you insert these down and into the coupler opening, and you can see they uncouple. And that's how a pick works. Now you see, I think you probably noticed I had difficulty in getting the coupler pick back out. And that is one of the problems with coupler picks. They can get stuck in the couplers themselves, and you can end up raising a car off of the rails. You can also do what I was just showing you. As you push down, if it's a very light car, you can bounce them off the rails as well. So coupler picks, I don't like that much. Another problem with coupler picks is people tend to lose track of what they're doing, and in trying to go back to another track in behind the string that's in front, you can knock cars over like that, and you can break scenery, you can knock handrails off of locomotives, you can do lots of things. I have a friend who has a very large HO scale layout, and we used to operate on a regular basis. He has told me on a couple of occasions that after each and every operating session, he has to schedule a full day to fix all the things that people break during the operating sessions. And that's scenery, that trees that get broken, fences that get broken, signs along the railroad right away that get broken as people inadvertently hit things. And another thing that can happen is, as people are moving underneath of a double deck layout, they can catch the top of this in the wires, and that can create problems. So I just don't particularly like using these. And there are places though, like out on the main line or in yards where you don't have magnets set up, where these come in handy, because you can use these anywhere that you don't have a magnet. This one here, it's a little short bamboo skewer. It's about 5 inches long. I put some black heat shrink tubing here on the top, makes it easier to manipulate it. And then when these get dull, you just take some sandpaper and sand them back to a point again, and they work fine after that. But the basic way that a coupler pick works is you need the tension off of the cars, so they need to be pushed up against one another. And then you insert the coupler pick in between the couplers, like that, and they'll come right off, or right apart. You also notice that this one came right off the rails. And that's one of the problems with coupler picks. And one thing I want to point out, I do add weight to all of mine. So you can see here, I've added, those are 1/4 ounce weights each, so there's 3/4 of an ounce added into this. And I tend to follow the NMRA recommended practice on this, which is 1 ounce of weight for the car, and then 1/2 ounce for each inch of length. So for a 3-inch long car, that would be 1.5 ounces. And then the first ounce is 2.5 ounces. In this particular car, it should weigh 2 3/4 ounces. It only weighs 1.7 ounces. So that's a little bit light as far as things go. But I do, like I said, I do weight them all. Okay, what I want to do now is give you a demonstration of uncoupling and delayed uncoupling using the between the track magnet that I just showed you and the under the track magnets, which I'll show you in a minute. That's on a little bit different area of the track here. Okay, I'm going to back up a locomotive to this set of wagons, British UK prototype. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll pull forward now, and we're going to go back and cut that, let's cut the brake van loose. And then we'll push it back out of the way using delayed uncoupling. Okay, we're coming up on the center of the magnet. Now, one thing about the way Kadees work is, as long as there's tension between the two cars, the Kadees will be tightly held together and they won't separate over the magnet. It's only when they back up a little bit, enough to release that tension, that the two trip pins are pulled to opposite sides of the magnet itself. Okay, and when those two trip pins pull to opposite sides, it opens the coupler heads. And then when you pull forward, they should disconnect. So let's watch. There. Now you can see that the two couplers are set opposite each other here. And now what happens when I back up, they're going to engage, but they're not going to come fully engaged. So I can push back and stop, pull forward. Whoops. That's one of the limitations. If you stop another set of cars or another pair of cars over top of the magnet, you'll uncouple unexpectedly. So you have to be very careful and watch what you're doing while you're switching using these under-the-track magnets. It's not as big an issue, though, with the American prototype cars. They're a lot longer. Okay, so we pull forward. You can see we've cut loose from the car, from the brake van here, and pulled forward. And now I stopped again, and because of the lack of tension on the two couplers, they separated over the magnet. So let's go back and pull everything here. I've got to stop right there. Now we'll pull forward again, and let's cut this car loose and push him back out of the way. Now you can see as soon as I stopped, they separated because the tension was released. And that's one issue with these cars when they are, with these couplers and these between the rail magnets. It's a very delicate balancing act to get them just right so that you won't uncouple unexpectedly. Okay, we can push this guy back and do the delayed uncoupling thing with him as soon as my other couplers clear that magnet. Okay, now as you can see, we've managed to push the car back out of the way, but again, I was going so slow that I lost the tension on that car because they just don't weigh enough. Now we got the delayed uncoupling. We're going to pull forward. And see, with the tension on there, with the weight of the full string of cars, they're not uncoupling. But if I slow it down, all it takes is a little stutter in the movement of those cars to release just enough tension, and they will uncouple. So there we go. Let's back them up. Uncouple, do the delayed uncoupling, push back, cut the string loose, and pull forward. And I've done all that without touching it a bit. But there are, like I showed you, there are a few things that can happen. You can have that type of unplanned uncoupling. Now, let me go ahead. What I want to do is move onto the other track behind us where that southern locomotive is sitting, and we'll go ahead and do the same type of uncoupling maneuvers with one of the hidden under the track magnets. Okay, like I said, let's take a look at the under the track magnet, and this is the Bachmann version. And let me point out that I just ordered a bunch of these, and I found out the Bachmann, I was able to find it at $5 each. And then I remembered that Kadee makes one just like it. So I looked up the Kadee price, and it was $3.50 each. So I ordered 7 of the Kadee versions and not the Bachmann versions. The Bachmann used to be $3 each, and they have really gone up in price lately. So you can see all I've done here is left a gap between the two pieces of cork roadbed, and I've inserted my magnet in place between those two sections of roadbed, and then laid my track directly over it. And they're designed for that type of installation. Now, for anybody who might be thinking about laying their track directly on the foam or the plywood or whatever, that's going to mean that you're going to have to cut out a spot, an opening for your magnets. So, that's another advantage of using cork roadbed like this, or any type of roadbed that at least allows you to elevate the track prototypically and install the magnets. Let's go ahead and I will show you delayed uncoupling using this kind of magnet. So I'm going to pull the locomotive and the car forward first, and we'll watch as they stop over that magnet. Okay, now I don't know if you can see, but those heads suddenly separated. So now if I pull back, I'm separated from the car. The two couplers are separated from each other. The trip pin on the locomotive is facing towards me. The trip pin on the car, on the Kadee on the car, is facing towards the brick wall in the background. And so the two coupler faces are slightly offset from one another. And that way, when I pull forward like this, they won't connect, okay? They will just engage. So I can push that car back, I can stop after setting it, and then I can pull the locomotive back without taking the car with me. And that's what you would do in a prototype operation practice. You would want to set a car off at a particular loading dock or whatever, and that allows you to stop at a magnet, set it up so that the two couplers are offset from each other and then not engaged, and then push that free car into the loading dock where you want to spot it. And that allows you to do that. So let me pull forward. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit now so we can get a better view of how this works. I'm going to pull forward, and let's go ahead and catch the whole train. And it's a short passenger train actually here. Okay, so he's just coupled up, and now he can pull the whole thing back. Now let's assume then that we want to cut out this one car, so we can stop right there over the magnet, release the tension just enough for them to separate, and then pull backwards again, and we've got it. And let's see if they separated far enough to do delayed uncoupling. So we'll push the string back, stop, and depart with that one car. And again, I've done this all without touching a car, touching a locomotive, anything. Before Kadees or without Kadees, and without the magnetic versions, I showed you how to use a pick. Another method, of course, is what's called the hand of God technique, where you reach in and lift the whole locomotive up far enough so that you can disconnect from a string of cars, and that's how it works. So the hand of God reaches in and does its thing. And of course, some people refer to that when they're talking about a coupler pick coming in and doing its job. There. So that's how, you would use a coupler pick. That's how you would use the under-track magnet. Now, let's talk about a couple of things that I wanted to point out as far as planning where to install these under-track magnets. Because as I said, if you're going to use this little guy here, you can put these anywhere because you can glue these down anywhere on your layout at any point after you've installed your track. And like I said, you can put some double-sided tape on here and just move them around until you find the sweet spot for where you want to be able to do your uncoupling. And that's one way to do it. And of course, I did talk about using the coupler picks, which give you a great flexibility. But if you're going to install these kind of under-the-track magnets, one thing you have to be aware of is that you can't use these on any curvature, because the two Kadee couplers have to be able to disengage and swing in opposite directions, because that allows the two to swing apart far enough so that they can then be pushed back together without connecting. just enough so that you can do the delayed uncoupling. Also, if you're on enough of a curve, it is possible that you won't even be able to uncouple at all using the magnet, because the coupler heads won't be able to disengage enough to even uncouple under those cases. You need to be out far enough away from a curved section of track so that your entire locomotive can be on straight track and facing on a line parallel with your other cars, so that the two coupler faces are going to be perfectly lined up with one another, and you're not going to have failure to disconnect. Now, this can be a problem on turnouts as well, particularly in yards where you're going up a ladder or something of that nature, because as the locomotive is going through a turnout, it's going through a curve. And so if you are pushing a car into a track and your locomotive is coming through the frog, it's still on a curve. So with any type of turnout situation, you have to allow the locomotive to come out far enough so that it's past the edge of the turnout and it is fully straightened out. And that's also very true on any small amount of curvature. Well, that's my wrap up on operating with Kadee couplers and some things that you have to think about when you're making a decision as to where on a track plan and on a model railroad you need to install the under track magnets if you choose to use them. Now, one of the things that I do want to point out, though, is that, there are other options, as I showed you. So you can decide not to use magnets at all. And I know a lot of people, I operate on a lot of model railroads that don't use them. They use the coupler picks. And I told you during the video why I don't particularly like coupler picks. I got them here on the Piedmont Southern simply because there are places where it is more convenient to actually use a pick, but I don't like using them for the reasons that I said earlier. Have a good week. Bye now.